Hi and welcome to the video. Today I want to talk about 7 mistakes in bird photography or in photography in general that I see quite common also among the participants of my workshop, and unfortunately some of them happen to me as well. Some of these mistakes might lead to you missing the shot, while others can actually harm or potentially even damage your gear. We could now argue which of the two is worse, but I think let's just skip this part and get right to the video so that you don't even make these mistakes in the first place. The first one happens rather on these cold winter days when you're outside shooting for a couple of hours. Afterwards you come home, maybe you have a warm shower first, and afterwards you eagerly want to import all the pictures, select them, edit them and so on. And the mistake is then that you just go home, take the camera bag into your warm living room or office, open it, take out the camera, and what then can happen is condensation, because the camera is quite cold while the air temperature is warm, so the air basically condensates, the camera gets wet. This might not sound like the worst kind of thing that could happen, but the problem is this condensation can also take place inside the lens and inside the camera, and on the long term this can cause damage, and I would really try to avoid it. So one option and method that I use here is if I take the backpack in the apartment, let it sit for a while, then start by opening the zipper a bit, maybe 20 minutes later opening the zipper more before then actually taking out the camera. Another option is if you have like an entrance that is not completely heated, which is maybe just, let's say, 10 degrees. It can be a nice first step for, that the camera is going from, let's say, -10 to this 10 and then to 22 or something. But what if you don't want to wait and you really want to have a look at the pictures, or maybe do a backup of the pictures because you have some really nice shots in there? Well, there is a solution, and actually it's quite simple. While you're still outside in the cold temperatures, preferably somewhere where it's not snowing anymore, just open the card slot of the camera, take your card out, put it in this small protective case that comes with the card, put this in your pocket, go inside the house, and this should be fine. The card itself is not so prone to these problems, and you can still keep it in this small case and it will slowly acclimate, and then after a few minutes you can put it in, and then you can leave the camera and all the gear all the time in the world in the backpack to slowly warm up before you take it out. Mistake number 2 is also concerning gear, and I see it quite often actually when I'm teaching workshops, and it's kind of a red flag. It immediately catches my eye, and it's the way that you change the lens on your camera. So I see some people just putting the camera then on a park bench or something like this, opening it here, mounting the lens, putting it away, looking for the other lens, putting it on. And what can happen is that a lot of dust is actually hitting the sensor of the camera or the protective filter in front, and this can be visible in the pictures after, especially if you shoot a bit with a smaller aperture and you have a lot of out of focus areas or a blue sky or something. So what I would try to avoid this kind of dust on the sensor is basically do the opposite. Hold the camera upside down, already prepare the next lens, and then you can do like a quick swap, and the chances of dust, dirt or whatever entering the sensor now are way cleaner, because usually they also don't go against gravity. For mistake number 3, let's stick with exactly this, changing lens and actually also changing memory cards. And what could be a mistake here, it might be fine in some cases, but I would also avoid it, is doing this when having the camera switched on. It can be that the IS, the image stabilizer of the lens, is still running, and if you then suddenly cut the power, so to speak, and the IS cannot park. For some lenses it needs to go in a parking position more or less, and also at least for some Canon, Nikon and maybe even Sony cameras, if you turn the camera off and you wait for a couple of seconds, the shutter is actually closing, or a special curtain in case of the Z9, which is not having an actual shutter. And this is just preventing that dust can enter. So it's an additional step to avoid the problem we just talked before. So just turn it off, wait 2 seconds. And when you turn your camera off, you will usually also see that the red light is blinking once more. This means, okay, now it's finished. And as soon as this blinking happened and the red light is out, it also means the camera is not writing any information anymore on the memory card. And yeah, this can also be a big deal. If you just, while the camera is running, take out the memory card, if it's writing something, these images can be corrupted. Even worse if the whole file system gets corrupted. And yeah, your images are probably as precious to you as my images are to mine, so just avoid this at all costs. Tip number 4 is maybe the thing that happens to me still the most often, and it's just laziness and stupidity. And it's when coming home, not charging your batteries and not emptying your memory cards. I don't think I need to tell you what not charging the battery means. And not emptying the memory cards, well, maybe you still have 500 shots on it, that's fine, right? Yeah, I thought so too a couple of times, but then you take a few videos, or it's just like an amazing scene, the light is nice, there is action, maybe you have a chick, and you just take so many pictures. I managed this a couple of times that then in 1 hour I was taking over 1,000 pictures, and then it was starting to get annoying because either the camera switched to the slower SD card that was in the camera, or even worse, I actually ran out of space and I was trying to delete some pictures and it's a mess. You miss shots, maybe you delete the wrong pictures. Just, I would really recommend start with a clean card, or at least with one where you know you have, let's say, at least 5,000 image left or something, so enough that should cover you for a whole morning. Let's assume you did these things perfectly right. Then mistakes number 5 that happened to me, well, not so recently anymore at least, is forgetting to take out the card out of the card reader and put it back in the camera, or forgetting to put the charged battery back into the camera. I think I don't need to go into any more details why this is a stupid thing. Let's go back to the camera itself. What else can you do wrong here? A lot, but the one thing I want to focus are the settings. And more specifically, not putting the settings back. Of course, you cannot always anticipate or know which settings you will use in the next shooting, but I have kind of a standard go-to settings that I always put the camera back to, which is always like the high continuous shooting. It's a servo autofocus, but by default, I put the center autofocus field. It just gives me a kind of a nice starting point, and I also know when I take the camera out for the first time, I have a rough idea what kind of settings I have dialed in. And sometimes I change them during the shooting, and sometimes I go crazy with them. Sometimes I might take out the continuous shooting altogether. Maybe I want to take a few family shots, I switch to JPEG or whatever. And here it's really crucial to put these settings back on. And the next thing that kind of goes in the same, also when you pick up the camera from the back, also quickly check if they are fine. So before putting it back into the bag, make sure that they're good, and when picking it up as well. Finally, one last tip about the handling of the camera. Most lenses come with a lens hood in the front, and I see some people not using them, and there are certainly situations where I would also not use them. This is maybe a topic for a different video, but in the most situations I would highly recommend using them. Even if you are not shooting directly against the sun, it's just not so much for image quality, but for me this is like a protective layer, especially with the big telephoto lenses that are also having quite a large lens hood. It just minimizes the risk of me hitting something with the front element, because yeah, there is just this huge lens hood in front, and for me that's kind of the best insurance I can have here in front of the lens. I prefer not to put a UV filter or anything there. So far I've been quite fine with just the lens hood. And here you go, 7 mistakes that I see a lot happening in the field, or that happen to myself when I'm trying to take pictures. And now I'm kind of curious, do you have more things that you think are important and other photographers should be aware of? If yes, just leave them down in the comments. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something to avoid some of the mistakes. And please subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and see you in the next video. Bye!